Even if people can't identify reactions to this exposure, proteins within their cells are being permanently altered. So what happens is all of the cells in your body have a protective sheath around them. And the radiation that these smart meters emit sort of breaks up and busts through that sheath and allows that cell to join on to another cell, changing the entire shape, size, everything about the cell. So it's changing so much in your body on a cellular level that you don't even realize until down the road when you're very sick. Most continue to use pharmaceuticals designed to eliminate acute symptoms when their patients are actually suffering from chronic illness linked to electromagnetic radiation exposure, which can only be fixed by reducing exposure. It's estimated that 80% of modern chronic illnesses are caused by or influenced by long-term exposure to sources of electromagnetic radiation, such as cell phones, cell towers, baby monitors, all that stuff. By far, smart meters are the worst offenders in the list. The combined electromagnetic radiation from these devices is evoking modern illnesses and disabling us at a level that has never been seen before, because these levels of exposure have never been experienced by human beings before. So then, this is an article that I'm reading. It's called Health Impact News. I'm drawing from to speak to you about this. And it talks about this doctor who specializes in the treatment of chronic illness. A typical patient that he and his colleagues treat has been seen by 23 other physicians before coming to his clinic. They have found that the foundational causes of illness are now quite different than they were 30 or 40 years ago. He explains that electromagnetic radiation, such as microwave radiation, permanently destroys and alters the manufacturing of proteins within cells, meaning this completely changes the human organism. There are a few of the important points made by Dr. Klinghardt in a video that, there's some papers in the back that list the web addresses of all of the short videos that are explained in this paper. The difference between people more or less electrosensitive is explained. It's like you could be fine with your cell phone and your microwave and all these things that you typically use, and then when they put the smart meter on, that seems to be the thing that is pushing people over the edge. And so then the utility company tells you that it's just like your cell phone. Like, who are you to complain to us about putting this meter on your house? You use a cell phone, you use a microwave, shut up and disappear. This is what they tell us. But smart meters are one of the most invasive technologies invented thus far. They invade our health by exposing us to radiation we cannot avoid, and they literally threaten our long-term survival. They invade our privacy because when they are fully implemented along with smart appliances, they will essentially be monitoring everything you do. They are invasive because they can be used to control our use of electrical power and make choices for us. So one of the things I found out yesterday was, after they gather all of this information about when you use electricity most in your home, it's all going to be divided up so that during those particular hours, they bill you more than they bill you for the hours during the day when no one's home. That's part of getting you to pay more. But every analog meter that remains in place stands as a beacon of freedom for those who are concerned about their health and wish to preserve independent thinking. That was me, but now I'm like, I don't know what to say about. Do you still have one?
I got a threatening notice from they're going to turn my power off.
Is that the first, second, third notice like that? Okay. your hearing. That's okay. So, here we go. That's pretty much, I mean, I have a sheet in the back, there's information in the back which is really lists, there's so many videos online that you can, just, if you just Google smart meter health, then health, all of it. I do. And I just realized that mine is not grounded. And I saw a video last night about how I have to ground it now. Is yours grounded? Oh, you don't have to. You don't even have the meter. Okay. Okay. Anyway, but most of the rest of the information is in the back, but they're taking over. The freedom issues, to me, the privacy issues are actually more important. I mean, whatever, it's all important, but the feeling that I have now in my home that they are watching everything. They know when I'm not home, they know when I'm on vacation, they know everything, and if they can know it, any hacker can know it as well and rob your home because you're out. So, I brought with me tonight our county commissioner, Joe Gale, because Joe Gale has been fighting since day one for the things that are important to you and I. And he's the only, I hate to even call him this because he doesn't really have any of the personality, character traits, but he's the only politician that I've ever met so far that is honorable and cares and goes after the people and the corruption that he sees around him from the powerful position of being a county commissioner. And I've watched him call these very powerful people out on their unacceptable pay-to-play kind of behavior right in front of the world and in front of them, and he's doing an amazing, amazing job, and I'm proud to be a supporter of Joe Gale. So with that,
good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's great to join you all here this evening. My name is Joe Gale. I'm County Commissioner from Montgomery County, not Berks County. So I made the trip here to just express to you how thankful I am that we have patriotic Americans in this country. And I appreciate what all of you do, and the fact that you take time out of your busy lives to come here and unite as one and to discuss important issues such as the smart meters. I have a very interesting story. I'm the youngest county commissioner in the history of Montgomery County. I'm now 28 years old. I was 26 years old when I was elected 2 years ago in 2015. And what was unique is that I beat the Republican establishment in Montgomery County, which is the third largest, thank you. Montgomery County is the third largest county out of the 67 counties throughout the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. In fact, it's larger than 4 states in population. It's over 823,000 people. And a lot of people told me it would be impossible to beat the establishment, never beat the party, you need $1 million. But I ran an independent grassroots campaign in the Republican primary because the Republican Party of Montgomery County endorsed 2 flawed candidates. One endorsed candidate of the Republican Party was a board member of Planned Parenthood, which I'm sure that doesn't share the values of many of you in this room. The other had a history of tax delinquency, and I felt like fiscal responsibility wasn't being represented with the ticket. So they were a team, and I ran as an outsider, and I beat the board member of Planned Parenthood in the primary. It was a big upset election. Then the establishment didn't accept the will of the people. Instead, they tried to retaliate and were angry and embarrassed that a young person beat the party. They tried to make an example of me, and they worked against me in the general election. So it became a face-off between 2 Republicans in the general election, and it was a fight over a 3-member board where the 2 Democrats were incumbents. So I'm the minority commissioner of Montgomery County. I'm on the board with 2 Democrats, and I'm a very outspoken minority commissioner. When it comes to fee increases, like the vehicle registration fee increase, some of you might know about the $5 vehicle registration fee increase. Several counties across the Commonwealth are implementing that fee increase. And that's a provision of Act 89, which is commonly known as the transportation bill, or more commonly known as the Corbett gas tax. They gave us here in Pennsylvania the highest gas tax in the whole entire nation. And that revenue is supposed to go towards fixing infrastructure, and instead, just like typical, as always, is being abused. And I pointed out that we had a spending problem, not a revenue problem. And I aggressively fought that. I aggressively fought property tax increases. I'm always out at every pro-life event I could possibly be at, not only Montgomery County, but the surrounding counties. Because what I'm sick and tired of are rhinos. You all know what a rhino stands for. Republican and Independent. And where I come from, and I know you experience here in Berks County, all the elected officials that do win, if they're a Republican, are a rhino because they vote like a Democrat. Whether it's in Harrisburg, in the State House, or the State Senate, or in Congress, all these people that we work hard to elect don't represent conservative values and principles. And that's what I always tell everyone. Republican is just the name of the party, but my values and principles are conservative. Those values and principles come before party name. And I just wanted to let you know that our message is spreading not only Montgomery County, but Delaware County, Bucks County, Chester County, Philadelphia County, Lancaster County, York County, Berks County. We're really having the movement spread, and it's a total independent grassroots effort. And I'm so proud that we had success with it. And after I won, I could have got down and kissed the rings and said, please accept me to the establishment, bring me back in. No, instead I keep fighting the establishment because we have a problem in all levels of government where the Democrat establishment colludes with the Republican establishment. And it's also the political class who get rich. It's all because they cater to their campaign donors, and it's an endless cycle of corruption. And that's the type of behavior I point out on the Montgomery County Board of Commissioners. Luckily, the public loves that. They appreciate the fact that I have the courage to stand up to this corruption and to call it out. And I'm proud that I take the arrows in the back because the establishment doesn't like that, but I think that means I'm doing my job. So I wanted to share my story briefly with all of you. I know you're all here to discuss the smart meters issue. I'm totally against what they're doing with the smart meters. In fact, the godfather of that issue, Representative Bob Gottschall, I assume a lot of you heard that name, Bob Gottschall. He's from Montgomery County, and he's a dinosaur that's been in the State House since the 1980s. He's sitting there collecting a check and building up his pension, and he's doing absolutely nothing except catering to the special interests. And he's a Republican. He's a rhino, Republican in name only. That's right, drain the swamp. And he's from Montgomery County. I've taken him on head on as well. So I wanted to let you know that you do have a common sense conservative voice that's pro-life, that's trying to do its best to end politics as usual in Montgomery County, but luckily that message is spreading to surrounding counties. So I brought cards with me tonight. It has my website, joegale.com. It has my contact information, a phone number, and email. I'd love to hear from all of you. I'd love to keep in touch with you and in communication with you. Because like I said, we're building that network, and if I can do it in Montgomery County, a very powerful county in Pennsylvania, we can do that here in Berks County and all the surrounding counties. So again, thank you for what you do. Thank you for being engaged citizens and taking your civic responsibility seriously, and I am very appreciative for that. So God bless you all, and thank you very much for your time.
At this time, as Tom DeWees is making his way to the stage, I would like to say something about these smart meters. And most of you don't know this, but I worked for a very large drug company until we were bought out. And I was in charge of facilities up in Organon, and we were bought out by Shearing Plow in Allentown. Well, I used to get all the electric bills and have to turn them in. Well, they were monitoring on these smart meters peak usage. And I'd get the monthly graph of the bill, and we had a lot of, obviously, machinery working there, so peak demand. It would spike up. That's where they'd say, that's where you're paying at. That's the most electric you use, so we're going to bill you with this all the way across, even though some other demand was down here. That's the same. That's just one of the little things they're doing with these meters. As she was saying, how they're going to charge us on peak demand. This is coming your way. This has been around commercially for years. It was 2011 I left the drug company when we were bought out by Merck. But I've dealt with that I was there 10 years. And I used to have to look at the graph. Every month it would come in, it would get sent to me. And I'd look at peak demand, I'd have to turn it into my boss, and then they would get the bills all paid. But it all worked on peak demand, it was smart meters, and it would just one flip up, okay, that's your electric usage for the month. Now we're billing all the way, straight across the line there. And when you looked at it, it came out to be thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars a month.
Peak demand has been done for 40 years.
Yeah, but this was a smart, that might have been commercially. I don't know if they do that residentially, but I just remember that it was a smart meter. They put them in the back of the building, and we'd get a graph every month. And when it went up to the peak, that's where they bill us at. Go ahead.
I got solar panels put on my roof. About a month later, Med-Ed shows up when I'm not home, takes the meter off the side of my house and installs a smart meter. So I called and I started complaining. They told me, fine, take it off, or we'll remove it, but then we don't have to supply you electricity. The neat thing about this is, when my solar panels were producing more electricity than I used, the old analog meter ran backwards. Now, the smart meter only deducts the generation fee. I'm still paying the transmission fees, okay? Then they turn around and bill the neighbor down the road the transmission fees for the power that I generated that went 200 yards on their wire. I need to tell you, these people got a racket going. And this is all part of that whole game that goes back to the whole global warming nonsense. The end of the world people have got everybody believing that the power companies should have the right to dictate how much electricity you can use and when you use it. Part of that game all was that when the federal government shut down the coal generation facilities and forced the implementation of natural gas, it cut the generation capability by 20%.
Right.
So in order to kiss the electric companies and make them happy, the state and federal government said, screw the constituents, we'll stay in group with the electric company and let them get the money. And they're raping us daily.
Absolutely.
Not to mention the fact that they can sell any information they get from your power meter to third parties, including the state and federal government, with no action from anybody. So if somebody's looking for somebody and they say, oh, geez, look at that. Your brother disappeared in Miami, but uh-oh, your electricity use went up. I bet I know where it went.
Yeah. And this is true. I mean, Rod, real quick before we bring up our main speaker, you can introduce him. Rod just bought a house. And Rod, being the young man that he is sitting here, was amazed that this thing came through email to him. And what did they say? He had some business back in the early 90s that nobody knew about, but him and his wife and somebody else. Well, this is how much information they have on him. They gave him a bunch of choices. He called me up and he says, oh my God, I don't believe this. They know something I did. It was only 3 months, for 3 months back in the early 90s, and he had to pick it. And, but that's how much information they gather on you. All this stuff goes together to gather information on us. You have no privacy. If you think you do, you don't. I mean, Deb and I do real estate. I mean, you can ask her. I find people, just going on the computer myself, and I'm pretty stupid with a computer, I find people all the time. It's that easy to find you. It's horrible what's going on. So, read George Orwell's 1984. I read that book back when I was in my 20s. Those things are happening today. Okay, would you like to introduce our speaker, please?
Is anybody getting letters showing your neighbor's usage versus your usage? And it's like, yeah, okay. Every month I get one of those letters. It's really it's psychological warfare to get you to think that you're such a horrible person for using so much electricity. Anyway, okay. We're all here to hear Tom DeWees, and I'm so happy to be here. Tom DeWees passionately believes in the rights of the individual over a powerful, tyrannical, collective society. He was one of the first to voice concern over the radical agenda of the environmental movement and to question its motives. To promote his strongly held philosophies of free enterprise, national sovereignty, and limited government, he travels extensively across the nation, speaking out as a passionate advocate of private property rights, personal privacy protection, individual liberty, and opposition to government education. Recognized as an expert in these fields, Tom DeWees has been quoted in the New York Times, Washington Post, and the Wall Street Journal, local radio and television programs, including Fox News. Today he serves as founder and president of the American Policy Center, editor of the DeWees Report, and author of 2 books. Now Tell Me I Was Wrong is his first book, and his new book called Erase is a fictional political thriller, which I just finished, and it's an amazing, amazing book. Tom DeWees is a genius. He writes this book in such a way that the reader will be able to identify the things in the book as happening in their own communities. Wow, you read something in the book and you're like, wow, wait, they just did that at my local township meeting. Wait a minute, they just did that at my kid's school. And you really start to, and then you wake up. But the book gives us solutions, not just problems. And that's what I really like about it. I just wanted to read you 2 sentences from Tom's book because I love them. What he needed was a way to control what was read and taught, to completely wipe out those opposing ideas, erase them so they didn't even exist. Somehow, he thought, if we could, right from birth, control the attitudes, values, and beliefs of an entire generation, they would never even know there was another way of thinking. Now, here was technology that, if corralled under one force, would provide the ultimate tool to effectively control the written word for an entire society. Tom DeWees.
Thank you. I'm very, very grateful for all of you to turn out tonight. I came up from Warrenton, Virginia. I live about 40 miles outside of Washington, D.C. So I'm far enough away that in our hot heat tonight in a warm room, I promise I'm not going to spew a lot of hot air to you. I'll try to keep it cooler. What I'm going to try to do is talk about a lot of subjects tonight. And I'm going to try to bring these issues together into one neat little pile so you can see how they all just kind of merge together. And to do that, first of all, think of these 3 things: free enterprise, individualism, and private property. These 3 things encompass all of the principles of freedom. Take away any one of them, and freedom begins to be diminished. Our founding fathers built the very foundation of this nation upon those 3 things: free enterprise, individualism, private property. These 3 truths of life define you as a unique individual, free to engage in commerce and benefit from the fruits of your own personal labor. And they provide you with the direct path to building personal wealth and a life of your own. Free enterprise, individualism, private property. These are the reasons why the United States grew into the envy of the world, why millions sought to come here, and why we quickly surpassed ancient nations in prosperity and a standard of living. I'm sure I don't have to tell you that there is a massive force, we've been discussing it tonight, that's out there working to eliminate these principles of freedom for our culture and our system of government. You've seen it. Your local government is changing. It's changing from the way that most of you have ever perceived it to be. It's changing in its makeup, and it's changing in the way that it operates. How? Why? Who's behind it? I know many of you, how many of you heard the term Agenda 21? Well, what is it? And what does it have to do with the changes in your community? Well, let me start by giving you some history. In 1992, 50,000 delegates made up of 179 heads of state, diplomats, business leaders, heads of corporations, government bureaucrats, and members of thousands of non-governmental organizations, private organizations, converged on Rio de Janeiro to introduce to the world a document that they called a comprehensive blueprint for reorganizing human society. Think about that. That is a massive statement. A comprehensive blueprint for reorganizing human society. Obviously, these guys thought this was a pretty big deal. Then, that fall, Nancy Pelosi introduced the idea to the U.S. Congress, calling it a comprehensive blueprint for the reorganization of human society. I've got the C-SPAN video of her doing that on my website. The UN, in a 1993 publication, described Agenda 21 like this, quote, Agenda 21 proposes an array of actions which are intended to be implemented by every person on Earth. It calls for specific changes in the activities of all people. Effective execution of Agenda 21 will require a profound reorientation of all humans unlike anything the world has ever experienced. Does that terrify you? This is what's behind almost every policy that we're dealing with today. Then, in 1994, the American Planning Association, which is the largest planning group in America, it's operating in almost every single community in the nation. They are the ones making up the plans that are changing your communities. In 1994, they published in their own newsletter, and it talked about an article in the back, how sustainable is our planning? And they went on to say in this article, also, various groups have been formed to implement Agenda 21, a comprehensive blueprint for, there you go, American Planning Association. In 1997, in the National Register, talking about the EPA's Challenge Grant Program, it said, a comprehensive blueprint for the reorganization of human society, Agenda 21. In 1998, in 1997, the federal government, 5 years after the implementation of Agenda 21, put together this 70-page document that says, from the United States of America to the United Nations Commission on Sustainable Development, this is a report on the implementation of Agenda 21, review and progress. Here it is. I was testifying before a committee in the Maine legislature, and before I went in there to speak to them, I was brought in to look at talk to the news media. And I knew they're sitting there with a smirk on their face. They always are, Agenda 21. That's what we get all the time. Tinfoil hats, the whole thing. And I said to this reporter, hold this. And he said, why? He's holding it in his hands. And I said, because they're going to tell you this doesn't exist. You now have it in your hands. This is the United States reporting on the progress of implementing Agenda 21. In 2011, the Environmental Protection Agency put out a report about the history of sustainability. And it says in very bold letters, Agenda 21, and it goes into great detail of how Agenda 21 was a blueprint they're using for everything they're doing. And on it goes. Agenda 21, the blueprint, the plan, the consensus, the direction for changing how people live. Here was the plan for the 21st century. And they're quite proud of it. Except, we got to around the year 2010, around in there, and all of a sudden that pride started turning to denial and charges of conspiracy theories. Never heard of it. What are you talking about? Oh, you mean that innocuous 20-year-old document that has no effect on anything? Yeah. Really? What happened? That's when I and others started to reveal the truth about Agenda 21 and sound the alarm bells. And soon thousands of concerned Americans, just like you, started to ask questions. They started to go to City Hall. They started to go to county commission meetings. And they started to ask questions. What are you doing here? What is about this? All of a sudden we got, this is what you get today. You walk in there, you get that 3 minutes to look at them up on high. They're always up above you, you know, looking down at you, just 3 minutes, maybe if you're lucky. And you ask about Agenda 21, and immediately you get the eye roll. You know, that's very well practiced. That's because in the background are these thousands of non-governmental organizations in the background. They don't want them to know anything about what you want to tell them. Shut them up. They train them to do that eye roll. The fact is, Agenda 21 certainly does exist and is being enforced at every level of government. But why is it a threat? And how did it get into your community? To understand the true threat of Agenda 21, you must first understand that it is not an environmental policy or just a good idea for planning future development for communities. That's how it's sold. It's not that. Agenda 21 is a threat to our nation, to your local community, to you, because it is a comprehensive blueprint specifically designed to change our way of life and our form of government. Agenda 21 encompasses every single aspect of your life and every decision that you make about it. That is its purpose. That's why they call it an agenda. Here are some hints to what they intend for our society in their own words. I didn't make these up. I'm not giving you this. They said these things. Now, climate change, we've had heard mentioned today, global warming, is the main scare tactic used to enforce Agenda 21. How many times have I had environmentalists say to me, well, it doesn't matter how many rights you think you have if you don't have a planet to stand on. Environmental Armageddon is the greatest scare tactic. Well, Christiana Figueres, the Executive Secretary of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, said in 2012, quote, "What is occurring here is the whole climate change process is the complete transformation of the economic structure of the world." Hitler would love this. Later, just last year, she said, quote, "This is the first time in the history of mankind that we are setting ourselves the task of intentionally, within a defined period of time, to change the economic development model that has been reigning for the last 150 years since the Industrial Revolution." You remember the Industrial Revolution? The thing that brought you electricity in your home, the thing that made it so that you didn't have to whack the horses, you could drive a car. Then, you had inside plumbing, you had vacuum cleaners, all that horrible stuff that they threw on us. How dare they? Interestingly enough, every 15 years, the United Nations holds yet another one of these meetings. In 2000, they had the Millennium Summit, and they came out with the Millennium Declaration. And the Millennium Declaration had 7 specific goals in it, or excuse me, 8 specific goals in it, all about the redistribution of wealth to eradicate poverty. All they were doing was taking Agenda 21 and making it more details of what they really had in mind. In 2012, they put together the Rio Plus 20 Summit to celebrate 20 years of Agenda 21. Believe it or not, speakers from that podium talked about what their agenda is now in 2012. Zero economic growth. This is their plan for a well-ordered society that won't disturb the earth, the profit motive has got to go away. Zero economic growth, we're going to stay right here and not move. And isn't that interesting? In the, they put together this well-ordered society. What they want to make sure is there's never, ever again a Thomas Edison, a Henry Ford, or the Wright brothers. They completely screwed up a well-ordered society. Do you know that Thomas Jefferson and Alexander the Great lived in the same world? They both traveled with the same speed on horseback, and they both lit their homes with candles. Along came Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, and the Wright brothers, and all of that changed, and our world changed. They want to make sure that never happens again. But this can't be the purpose behind local planning. Our local officials assure us that their plans are all local. Well, I mentioned the American Planning Association, the largest and most respected planning group in the country. They are operating, as I said, in almost every single community in the nation. The APA, American Planning Association, is part of the Planners Network. So, you go to the website, plannersnetwork.com, and read the statement of principles. It says, quote, "We believe planning should be a tool for allocating resources and eliminating the great inequalities of wealth and power in society because the free market has proven incapable of doing this." Ladies and gentlemen, that is what every single planner and every single community, your communities, believes. And that is the premise that they're operating from. There are, in this world of sound bites, this is such a massive issue, trying to wrap your head around it. I've been doing it for 25 years, and every once in a while I actually grasp something. It's so massive. I try to get it down into the closest, easiest way to describe it I can. I've done this. There are 3 main points of attack to enforce sustainable development policies. 1, destroy private property ownership and control. 2, impose regional councils and regional governments, taking government further away from the people. And 3, feed the entire plan with federal grants. The rules impose guidelines created on the international level for building materials, plumbing codes, electric codes, installing bike lanes, building apartment buildings with no parking lots, and establishment of public transportation, including, of course, light rail trains. If a community takes the grant, they accept these restrictions. They accept the dictates of that grant. They are responsible for imposing that. The community might take a grant simply because they needed some money to repave Main Street. When they're done, they're going to find out they've got a rotary at each end of Main Street, they've got bike paths, they've got certain kind of materials they're allowed to use, and on and on and on. Many times the grants create programs that now need local federal funding to keep them going. That would be the light rail trains, for one. After creating such programs, these same NGO groups, they headed into your state legislature. First of all, they got the grants written on the federal level, then they went to the state legislatures, and they lobbied for legislation that would force nearly every community to impose comprehensive development plans. Then, as the local communities, you imagine your county commissioner, city councilman standing there going, in the beginning, what the heck is a comprehensive development plan? Well, they're met with the NGOs. I'm talking about the Sierra Club, the Nature Conservancy, the Audubon Society, Planned Parenthood is an NGO, the National Association, Education Association is an NGO. There are thousands of them. There are local groups. There are groups that push bike paths. There are groups that push rails to trails. There are groups that, I mean, you name the issue, there's an organization organized to do it. They have massive funding to do this. They help write this stuff. They have their own private agendas and do exactly what they were doing when they put it together. Now it's their job to go in and make this happen. So here you have your local elected officials, and they're saying, what do we do? How do we do this? These guys arrive and they say, don't worry. Got it all right here in a box for you. Got the money too. Don't worry. Just sign right here. Press real hard. Here's 85 copies. And what are the results of this internationally created, federally funded, and state-enforced assault on your local community?